So we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Nicole Pounds. I'm the Director of Clinical Outreach here at DotCom Therapy, and we wanted to just be a resource for you guys. We know that a lot of people are entering into teletherapy and providing services using this provision method that maybe don't know a whole lot about teletherapy. And at DotCom Therapy, we have been providing teletherapy services for years, and so we have developed quite a bank of tips and tricks, and so we wanted to just be a resource for people who are new to teletherapy services, and just to provide some insight and some information in the space. So before we get started, I want to introduce the people who are here with me from DotCom Therapy. So first we have Rachel Robinson. Rachel is our founder and president at DotCom Therapy. She's also a speech-language pathologist, and she is joining us from Wisconsin today. We have Andy Swabowski. Andy is a clinical manager with us and has been in that role for a little over a year. And so her main position is supporting our therapists. So she has lots of teletherapy knowledge and experience, and she's joining us today from Illinois. And then we have our two newest members of our clinical support team. We have Lydia Hamilton, who just joined the clinical support team as a clinical manager, but she's also been with DotCom Therapy for 3 years as a bilingual SLP, and she is joining us from Oklahoma today. And then we also have Holly Garrett, who has been with DotCom Therapy for 3 years as an SLP, and is now filling the role as a clinical manager as well, and she is based in Virginia. So I'm going to pass the floor over to Rachel, who just has a little bit of words of encouragement for you guys as you get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole, and thank you everyone for tuning in today. We're excited that we're able to use what we've gathered for the past 5 years as teletherapy best practices and share that advice with you. As Nicole stated, I'm Rachel Robinson, the founder and president of DotCom Therapy. More importantly, I am an SLP. Founded DotCom Therapy back in 2015 as a boots on the ground therapist, figuring out how to translate what I knew of in-person therapy over to teletherapy services. So I have been in your shoes. I do know one thing, and that is that anyone who works in education, we are incredibly resilient, and just know that we already have the tools necessary to make online services a success. It's really just ironing out the different nuances that come with this specific mode of delivery. Additionally, we work with our students daily on having mental flexibility and creativity and supporting their classmates. And it's really time that we take our own advice and put this into action. We have to remember that we are better together, and we need to celebrate progress and lift each other up. In the coming weeks, we are going to be expanding our resource library on our website, /Better Together. We are also making ourselves available to you and the unique needs that you may come across with your school district, with your clients. And we just want to be here as a different support system for you. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to help, and feel free to lean on us.
Thanks, Rachel. So before we get started with the question and answer portion of today, I just want you to know that we had a lot of questions that were submitted by you guys. So we sorted through all of the questions, and we chose the questions that were asked the most frequently. So if there is a question that you had submitted that you really wanted the answer to, or you need additional support like Rachel was talking about, we are going to make the slides available to you, or since this is on the recording, you can just pause the recording too at the end of this, but all of our contact information is at the end of this presentation, so you guys are welcome to reach out to us if you need additional support, or if there was something that you really wanted to be answered today, able to make it to during the question and answer time. So I'm going to go ahead and share the slides with you guys that shows the questions that we're going to be answering today. Okay. So I did include this slide that just has all of our pictures on it too, so that you guys have this for reference if there is something that one of us is talking about today that you want more information about, but you can't maybe remember our name. This can be of service to you as you go back through these slides and this information. So the first question that we're going to talk about is, what is the role of the parent or facilitator? So a facilitator, to start off, is someone who is on the student's screen who assists with the teletherapy session. In the situation, that would most likely be a parent, but it might be another caregiver in the home. It just kind of depends on the individual's situation. Facilitators can be either active or passive, depending on the therapy that's being provided and the individual needs of the student and what is best for the therapy that you're providing. So an active facilitator really just takes a more active role in the session. So that might look like you requiring them to set up some sort of materials for you. They may be helping with prompting and that sort of thing. They may be kind of following the student around with an iPad because they're really active. So it can look like a lot of different things, but they're a much more active role in the session. Whereas a passive facilitator, they might help the student get logged on, but maybe the student is a little bit more independent and doesn't need that hands-on active participation of the facilitator. So the facilitator can kind of shift into the background, maybe even attend to some other things, but still be present in case there are technology issues or anything like that that they would need to help with. So they're still there as a support, but not quite as actively as an active facilitator would be. So the next question is, what does a typical teletherapy session look like? And I'm going to send the floor over to Andy to answer this one.
Sure. When it comes to a typical teletherapy session, it actually looks a lot like the therapy that you do on the ground in your brick and mortar setting. I always say that it looks very much the same, except for probably a tech check in the beginning to make sure that all of your equipment and the student's equipment is working properly. Same as your in-person session, therapy should always include rapport building activities, a review of the previous session's activities and maybe your student's progress, clear instruction and goal setting for your current session, a variety of mixed media activities to keep students engaged. So you might use websites or worksheets or videos, consistent and effective feedback, a review of session progress when the session is complete, and then make sure you're always providing activities for home or school carryover for generalization. I think it's always important to recognize that your skills as a therapist have not changed just because the model has changed.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, I'm going to pass the next question over to Rachel, which is, what students are appropriate for teletherapy?
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole. And this is really a difficult question because every student is so incredibly different, and you really have to rely on your own professional skills in order to deem whether a student is appropriate for teletherapy or not, and you need to assess each individual on an independent basis. Some of the questions that you should be asking yourself on whether or not a student is appropriate for teletherapy services is, are they mentally, physically, emotionally able to attend to a session? Have I reduced distractions in my own environment and their environment to ensure that their attention can be solely on you as the provider? Have I provided enough information and support to the facilitator that's on the student's end to ensure that I'm giving them the highest possibility for success during this teletherapy session? And lastly, is my student going to benefit from the services that I'm providing? And based off of your answers to each of those questions, you can determine whether or not a student is appropriate for teletherapy services.
Thank you, Rachel. So the next question I'm going to pass to Andy. What types of materials do I use and how do I present those to students?
Sure. You can use a variety of materials with students. You might include things like colorful static PDFs that work more like a slide, that are easy to annotate, which means draw on or highlight with the right tools. You can also present your students with interactive materials that provide feedback. So materials that might ding or click when a student chooses a right answer from multiple choice selection, or activities that allow students to drag and drop words or pictures from one place to another. You can also use physical materials like books, bubbles, Play-Doh, and I've even seen therapists use what I like to call mystery box, where they've had a box of different materials for students, and they hide things inside and then use those describing activities or noun functions or describing attributes with things that are in that box. You can also use black and white printables. You can use educational websites. You can also use videos and songs. Really, how you present those materials depends on your video conferencing platform and equipment. Most platforms will allow you to screen share, which makes utilizing a variety of materials pretty easy.
Great, thank you, Andy. Okay, so the next question that was submitted is, can you share suggestions for teletherapy for young children? And what about students with low cognition or autism? So like Andy and myself and Rachel have already talked about, you guys have the skills to be able to do this. You guys know your students, you know what they need, and you have the ability to be able to determine what it is that they are going to benefit from and what's going to be motivating to them and what their needs are as far as prompting and cueing and all of those things that you would be providing in person. It's the same thing through teletherapy. So some things that you might want to think through, similar to in-person, you should find things that are motivating to them, things that they are interested in, and that can look a lot of different ways when we're providing teletherapy services. So it might be something that's online, like an online game or activity that they really love, but it also could be something that's in just a tangible item, either on their side or on your side. So just finding something that's motivating to them. And you may need to communicate with your facilitator. You may need to communicate with your facilitator about this too, especially if it is something that is tangible that you are wanting access to. That may be something that you need to talk with your facilitator about, so that you have access to that in your session. You can also use your facilitator to model things. You might, if you have certain toys on your side or certain items on your side that they also have, you can model some of those play skills and language skills. So it just kind of depends on what the needs are of the student and what you have access to. I would also recommend planning a lot of activities so that you can move through them quickly if needed, especially if you are working with a child who has low attention skills. That way, if you notice that they have lost attention or lost motivation, you can move on to the next thing to find something else that's working for them in that session. And then also just knowing that there is value in caregiver training and then also observation and coaching. So especially right now where we're providing services at home, this can be a really useful tool because you can spend time training caregivers so that they are helping with the generalization of skills. You can also observe them interacting with your student and provide coaching to them, but also to your student in those instances, so they maybe can have a conversation together and you can sort of act as a coach in that. So really it just depends on what the needs of your student are and how you're providing that, and you guys do have the skills to be able to do that, but some additional things to think about when it comes to providing it via teletherapy. Okay, so the next question is, how do we ensure confidentiality when sessions are held at home? What about groups? So we're gonna send this to Andy.
Sure. It is our role to really ensure that client confidentiality when telepractice services are used. According to the ASHA telepractice portal, it is a therapist's responsibility to obtain informed consent for use of telepractice and documentation of the telepractice session. It is also our responsibility to be knowledgeable about and compliant with existing rules and regulations regarding telepractice. And this also includes security and privacy protections. To really manage your risk, clinicians are advised to obtain documentation of informed consent from the client or the parent or the guardian. This may include a description of the equipment and services to be delivered, how services via telepractice might differ from services delivered in person, the individual's right to revert to traditional face-to-face care at any time, any modifications that will be made in assessment procedures, and potential confidentiality issues. The documentation may also include the type of equipment used, the identity of every person present, the location of the client and the clinician, and the type and the rate of transmission. I would highly suggest visiting ASHA's telepractice portal and reviewing the privacy and security sections under key issues for additional information.
Great, thank you, Andy. So our next question is, should I be working only with the child during therapy or working with the caregiver? And I would say that both are important. I talked a little bit about this on a previous slide, but both are important, and we are kind of in a unique situation where we are working from home, and the facilitator that is present during teletherapy sessions would likely be the parent or another close caregiver. And so you obviously want to work with the student. You are the therapist, you are providing direct therapy services for that student, and you are the one who has the training to be able to provide that service to them. You are the one who knows how to prompt them and how to teach them those skills. But I also do think that there is a lot of room for some caregiver training as well, especially in this special time where the parents and caregivers are present during your sessions. And so there is a lot that they can learn from you. And so just thinking through kind of both aspects of those, you really do want to be providing both if they're applicable for your student. I am going to pass the next question to Andy. How are evaluations completed via teletherapy?
Yeah, most standardized assessments are available online from publishers. This will allow you to screen share the stimulus photos while verbalizing the test prompt. Therapists can continue to record answers to test questions on those paper protocols and then use the online manual to score. Some assessments are only available in book copy format. So when using a book copy test, it's best practice to set up a webcam in such a way that clients can actually see the stimulus book while you turn the pictures. So setting the camera up like this, the stimulus book like this, and then turning those pictures. Therapists, again, will continue to use paper protocols and the test manual to score, record and score. It's really important in these times to consider your client's environment. You're really gonna wanna spend quality time before testing with the child's parent or guardian and really set expectations for the environment and proper facilitation. Your younger students will definitely need help with technology and motivation for participation, and parents will probably need some coaching for do's and don'ts during a test, a test administration session.
Perfect. Thank you, Andy. Okay, so the next question I'm going to send to Rachel. What OT resources, so materials or assessments, would you recommend?
Awesome, thank you. And for OT assessments, I would just note to keep an eye out on AOTA's website. They should be releasing a webinar soon on how to use OT assessments through teletherapy. As for materials, occupational therapy doesn't differ really from speech therapy in that you can use online resources. You can work with the parent on what different resources that they have in the home environment, maybe even creating a resource library with them prior to delivering your sessions. You can then pull from that resource library, send the parent or facilitator which resources you're going to want to use prior to the occupational therapy session. There's tons of materials online. You're able to also send in the mail any materials that you're wanting to use during your OT sessions prior to delivering the therapy session. I will also note that occupational therapy does work on some sensitive goals such as toileting and dressing, and we do not recommend that you do any of those through direct video feed, but instead maybe provide your parent with some suggestions and consultative services on how they can target those goals outside of the teletherapy session.
Great, thanks, Rachel. So our next question will go to Andy. So Will I need to provide compensatory time if I'm not able to fill their whole IEP minutes? And what should I do about documentation?
For that question, it's really best practice to refer to your specific school district and your state guidelines for recommendations on compensatory time and documentation practices. Really, each state varies in requirements and policy, and you'll want to get guidance on that from your district and how they'd like to proceed specific to those guidelines.
Great, thanks, Andy. So our last question for today's question and answer section is, I'm considering a career change to teletherapy. What are the benefits of working in teletherapy? So I think I speak for all of us whenever I say that we love teletherapy. We've all had really great experience with working in teletherapy, and there are a lot of benefits. And if you go to our Better Together page, there are whole sections and blogs on teletherapy that can give you more information. A few that I'll just kind of touch on today. Number one, you are working from home, which is a huge benefit. So you can set up your own space. You can have natural lighting. You cut out your commute. You can throw a load of laundry in on your lunch break. So there's lots of benefits just for working from home. It is also very engaging for your clients and your students because of the nature of video conferencing. Just working on the internet is very motivating for them, and it just causes our students to be really focused, we found. And so it works really well as far as like providing the services. We also, at least at DotCom, we have a very collaborative space. And so while there are sometimes speech therapists that are working in a school district that maybe they're the only speech therapist for the entire district, they don't really have anybody to collaborate with or lean on for questions or anything like that. At DotCom, we have a whole network of therapists that we work with. And so if I have a question about a situation or I need a resource, I have a lot of people that I can reach out to and collaborate on. And so I know that I've grown a lot as a therapist since I started working in teletherapy because of that collaboration and just pushing each other to go farther. And so there really are a lot of benefits. And like I said, if you go to that Better Together page, there are even more that we talk about there too. Okay. So if you are tuning in and you want more information, our contact information is listed here. If you do have a question that you wanted more information on, you're more than welcome to reach out to any of us, and we'd be more than happy to offer any more support that you guys need. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that it's helpful to you and informative. We hope that you know that you have the skills to be able to do this, and that you feel a little bit more confident as you enter into your teletherapy sessions going forward. So at DotCom Therapy, we really do believe that we are better together, and we want that to underscore everything that we do. And so we hope that you guys will reach out if you do have any additional questions. But thank you so much for joining us today for this.
Thank you.